It's a board meeting. Beverly, you want to do roll?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Chairman French.
Here.
Mr. Edmiston.
Hello.
Mr. Ellis. Dr. O'Halloran.
Here.
Mr. Durant.
Here.
Ms. Odell. Mr. Jones.
Present.
Mr. Lakakis.
Here.
Mr. Cody.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Can we have a first and a second to open?
Move to approve. Second.
Could I have a quick discussion on it?
That's next.
Okay.
That's next. We got.
Do all of the minutes need to be listed in the minutes? I mean, in the agenda? Would it be possible to have a link to another document with them, or do we want to have?
I need
just wanted to bring it up because it is a
to.
lot.
I need to open the
First.
discussion
That's
for the
fine.
meeting, so I had a first and a second. I'd like to open it for discussion.
Well, I have one change on that on page 26. I'm still trying to get there. Scroll. I am.
He's still scrolling.
I'm up to page 16. Like the third entry, it's under my name.
Okay.
That's not me. I think it was Curtis.
Somebody else?
Okay. Page 26.
Yeah.
Now, when I looked at it earlier, it didn't have names on it.
You gotta go back one. Sir? It's like the third or fourth.
I didn't
entry
care,
on
but
the
I'm just
page.
letting you know it didn't have names on it.
Okay, any other
Okay.
discussions on the minutes? If not, I need a vote to approve the minutes. All in favor, raise your hands.
I'll approve.
It's already been motion.
All opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. So the next action item on the, or not an action item, the next item on the agenda is some presentations by Georgia Howard. Trustee Curtis, do you want to introduce them? And
Sure. I'd like to introduce Mark Kane with Georgia Power with the Electric Transportation Team Lead. Mark?
Yes, thank you. Get Howard here. Yes. So honored and it's a privilege to be here. Really appreciate this opportunity to speak in front of you. You know, it takes a village. So my village here today, I brought with me David Duvall. He is your key account manager. That is the person that's your first go-to for everything that happens here with your customer. And David's a resident of Savannah, so he's right here locally, and he'll absolutely take care of you. And he's one of the best and finest that we have. Sure. Next up is Gary Stokes. Gary Stokes is a project manager and an engineer. He did an extensive amount of work on this presentation that you'll see, let's call it behind the curtain. And so we brought him here today for any technical questions that you might have, both today as well as moving forward. I know that many of you are already familiar with the work that Gary's done. And then last but not least, this is Mr. Osmond Bollock. He is the product specialist in electric transportation for us. Osmond is also local to your market, and he's been working on this project for, let's just call it a considerable length of time. So he has been deeply involved and invested in this. My position at Georgia Power, I'm out of the Atlanta office. I'm the team lead for electric transportation, and that includes everything from, let's call it off-road, which would be typical things like forklifts or terminal tractors or things that happen in Port of Savannah, as well as on-road. And on-road is anything that you can imagine that travels not only on the road, but also in the years forthcoming in the air. So that's autonomous vehicles, that's electric buses, that's fleet work. We do a tremendous amount of work in converting fleets out into the marketplace, and we do it with a product we call Will It Work, which is a database product, very similar to what we did here and very similar to what Mike and Steve and Grant and their group did in determining what equipment that they needed for the buses. As a matter of fact, as a side note, we did work about a year and a half ago with the City of Savannah, converting their parking enforcement fleet from fossil fuel vehicles into the electric, and I think that they're just starting to deliver some of those first vehicles here presently. So we appreciate this opportunity to speak in front of you. We find electrification as one of the big plays At Georgia Power, we have what we call a platform we call EVER, which is the Electric Vehicle Evolutionary Roadmap that takes us out in milestones in the state of Georgia from present all the way out to 2030 currently. And I think we'll get Osmond and maybe David to share that with some of you later on so you can see our view of electrification and how it's going to impact the state of Georgia overall, which is different than other states. We're not like California, we're not like New York, we're not like Chicago. So it's really a pinpointed look at electrification over time for the state of Georgia. So that's pretty much introductions there. Again, wanted to thank you for your business. Really appreciate all the money that you spend with Georgia Power, and we consider this truly a partnership. We're not a vendor of sorts, and just really appreciate being here. Okay, so when we get to projects like this, and this is really on the cutting edge of what's happening in the state of Georgia with electric bus utilization. These are some of the groups that we're working with, have worked with in the past, and are currently working with in specifically electric bus deployment. Our side of it is the infrastructure side of it. And each one of these has a separate story. So Hartsfield, we did their infrastructure work for them up there end of last year. They just delivered their 2 buses there. Macon Transit, we're doing their entirety, much like for yourselves, of their electric infrastructure for their bus depot. And in their case, we're doing everything from parking lots to water retention ponds to you name it. So we're really a turnkey operation for our customers when it comes to that. CERTA, right now we're working on an autonomous vehicle project with them that's going to be granted, putting in for a grant in 2020 that we think is going to happen in 2022. So in our world, we're talking, you know, not just today, but it's more of a today, tomorrow, and then the future type of look that we take with it. MARTA is a different type of depot charging. That's really for their automotive and their customer fleet, so it's customer facing. But we're doing 10 of their most high volume sites with them, and they should be signing that this week, as a matter of fact. University of Georgia is electrifying their entire on-campus bus fleet, so we're working with them, but particularly on the product engineering side of that and product management. And Georgia Tech, obviously, long-standing relationship there as we build out what they want their electrification to look like. So experience does matter. We love the aspect of what you guys have done here. I do have a couple of kudos I want to hand out. So first and foremost, I have to start with, pardon me, the most important person in the room, Beverly. She did a phenomenal job in supplying us information, so thank you for that. She really was very helpful to all of us here on the team. But I really wanted to point out Mike and Steve and Grant for the work that they did behind the scenes. I would call it exceptional in the sense that they really took a focused, deep dive in what they were after. They just didn't listen to a vendor, what the vendor was saying, which kind of muddies the water a lot of times, and they had a focus on their application, which is the routes that they ran. They had the data behind it, and instead of utilizing what the vendor had for them and possibly changing their application, they made sure that the vendor supplied them with what they wanted, both today and for the long term. So I really commend them for that. It's an exception because in this board you don't see a lot of that up there. So really want to thank them for the work. And they made our jobs easier, right? So this is really our partnership slide, and we do consider this a partnership, and thank you for allowing us to participate in this. And what we do is we supply turnkey operations for electric bus infrastructure. And you're going to see the core elements of that. And the reason that the experts are here today, if you have questions later on in the presentation, they're the guys that are going to be able to answer those questions. But we wanted to make sure that you saw that we were totally aligned with what you were doing, which not only is the environmental sustainability side of it. Many times a lot of companies and a lot of our customers talk about the green side, and they are interested in green, but a lot of the green that they're interested in is the money, right? And that's okay also. You will see a slide that has both sustainability green in it and money green in it. And then again, the progressive side of it. So as I mentioned, electric vehicles are the future of what's happening here in the United States. They dominate the landscape in China. Certainly in Europe, they have many mandates over there where entire countries, just in the very near future, are not going to allow fossil fuel vehicles in their footprint. And so I really applaud you for being on the forefront of this electrification effort here locally, and we're certainly going to stand shoulder to shoulder with you on that for all of the technology innovations that we see coming as well. Okay, this next slide, now we're starting to get into some of the meat of the equipment that's here. We have a separate board. I'm just going to cover the high line, but again, I think we have enough time that we'll be able to take all the questions that you might offer later on. But this is the stage where Mike and Steve and Grant, they really took a hard look at the bus vendors, and they chose a vendor that was really instrumental and really was going to meet their needs on that side of it. And then we took the data from what they had collected from the questions that they had and the answers that they got from the vendors and their specific application, and then they gave it to us. And when I say us, they gave it to Osmond, they gave it to Gary, they gave it to Mike Joyner, who's not here today, unfortunately, to come up with a solution that would supply the power that those buses needed for the routes that they were running. So this is all database, so we went behind the scenes and we crunched all the numbers and we looked at a wide range of vendors and their capabilities and really came up with ABB as the vendor because they were the ones that had the highest kW values on their chargers. Many of the other vendors would have had to couple multiple chargers together to achieve this value. And this is really on the forefront of what's happening in electric bus transportation is this 150 kW charger. The takeaway we want to have here just on the front side is that this includes a 5-year warranty and 24/7 remote monitoring, right? So you're going to have full support for this infrastructure from the day that it goes in, 5 years, 24/7. And when we talk about the monitoring side of it, even though ABB is going to be monitoring it, we're going to be aware of what's happening. And in many times, they can tell you what's going to happen before it happens, which is really important because your buses need to charge and they need to be consistent. You need to be knowing what's going on. And when they say monitoring, monitoring is every hour, minute, and second of every day. So it's not just in blocks, it's continuous around the clock. And again, I can flip back to these slides when we have the question side of it. This is really the, okay, so this is the exciting stuff. This was what made this project really unique, and what I would say made it very innovative was the request to be able to take charging infrastructure and travel and take it away. I think everybody sitting in this row, certainly me, we were here during Matthew because when we have our DAT teams come in, everybody, doesn't matter what job you have, wherever it is, we come in to Savannah. I spent many nights sleeping in the parking lot over at the Kilowatt, in support of what's happening here for your city. So, I mean, we have a commitment for that. And so we have a local knowledge of what it took and what happened to Chatham area transit at that time and how you're shuttling people out of the city and then conversely back into it. So the unique part of this particular unit right here is it does travel, it does have a built-in generation system on it, right? But what we were also able to accomplish, and I think you'll see it in the next slide, the unique thing about this is that it's not just built for travel. You're going to be able to utilize this on your site as one of charging 4 buses, just like they're plugging into the other depots. So what that means to you economically is we were able to save you probably upwards of about $400,000 by the utilization of this piece of equipment in your local site, as well as having the ability to travel instead of putting in separate chargers. So it's really a unique opportunity there. So this is the site. Now I can kind of point out exactly where I was talking about. So here you have the big unit, this 2500 kVA transformer. This is unique because it allows you to future-proof, meaning build out your bus infrastructure without putting a smaller transformer in there, 1,000 or whatever. We're going to do this one time, and it's going to take you building out to 18, 20, 22, possibly 24 buses instead of having to replace that transformer. So that's very unique, and I think it's very much on the cutting edge of where you want to be. Here's the switchgear. This is also where that experience comes in. This is where 2 of your heavy vehicle charging cabinets are for the buses, and then the other 4 are located in the trailer, right? So what's unique about this is you're going to have your 6 buses lined up right here for charging, and 4 of them are going to come from this section, and 2 of them are going to come from this section. But you'll have the ability, and then this can travel, so you have the ability to do 6. And then the future-proofing side of it is that we've designed the initial system to hold 12 buses. So we're building that in on the front side, so it's very economical for where you're going. Let's just call it in the near future. So that's a visual of the site. Core question. So I mentioned that the economics play a big part of this. So we were asked to break down the slides by what was happening by particular cost breakdowns. As you see here, you're going to see the electrical and the switchgear, which you saw on the previous slide, the charging infrastructure, the generator solution, that's what's in that trailer, plus the chargers that are there, and then you're going to see a total here. I think our initial projections for this, when we first started to look at the scope of work, was about $2.2 million right in there. But when we really took that deeper dive and we came up with that solution of putting the chargers in the trailer and have to utilize on-site as well as travel, that was a huge cost savings that we built into it. And then the second slide, the second half over here, is really in addition to. This is a choice that you could make. It could be none, it could be one, it could be the other. And these are the total maintenance and repair costs over a 60-month period for what you would have annually for the generator, maintenance and repair, and for any of the infrastructure. Because in this case, you own the infrastructure. The transformer is yours. All that switchgear is yours. They are mechanical beings, so eventually mechanical beings are going to break at some point, no matter how good they are. The odds of this breaking are very low. Be right up front with you, they're extremely low. But when it does happen, you're going to want Georgia Power there, and David's going to be your first call on that when it does happen. And if you decide to go this way, we're going to know about it instantaneously, and we'll have crews on the spot for that, so you don't have significant, if any, downtime on that. And the same thing goes for your generator, right? So these are additional costs to this number right here, should you choose to go that direction. If you have questions about that, we've got a team here that can answer some of those, or we can have a separate meeting, a little bit deeper meeting on that if you like. So this is all necessary design and permitting, the KVA transformer, the switchgear, the mobile container, the heavy-duty charging, 5-year, 60-month warranty on the equipment, and total maintenance and repair should you choose to go that way later on. Okay, so this is where the other green comes in. We combine both greens. So here's money green and sustainability green. So when we got all the data from Mike and Steve and Grant, we crunched all those numbers, as I mentioned earlier, when we were looking at the equipment for the chargers, and came up with that formula, because what we do is we do conversions between fossil fuel driven applications to electric applications, and we broke it all down. So this is not an opinion, it's really database. That's the way we do the Will It Work segment of it. And we broke it down into the efficiencies, the fuel costs, and we broke it down by an annual fuel cost per bus. So this is fuel cost per bus comparison, and then extended it out. Now, we only do 2 of the buckets, of the 3 buckets. So the first bucket is what's the cost differential between diesel and electric power. That second bucket is what's the environmental impact of that. And then the third bucket, which is a huge bucket, is the operation and maintenance savings side of it. And I think, Steve and those have a very good handle on that. We would project it's probably very conservatively in the 35 to 40% area of what you're saving right now. I would say that in our comparisons also, that these are ultra conservative. When we actually go into the actual usage of the vehicles in the application, typically we find that they're higher than these. So what we have here is a 71% savings in fuel savings. Need my second one to come up. There it is. So this is the other green, right? The CO2 emission green. So 7.2 tons, that's for 6 buses over 12 years. So we got a huge sustainability story that can be told to your local public here, and something you should be very proud of. And then we have the third phase, which is over a 12-year lifespan, which is, we understand that's the lifespan of what you have your buses in your fleet for. It should be $1.1 million for 6 buses. But if you take it about over time, and we know this would be incremental, but if you took it about over your entire 55 bus fleet, which was the target, then you would go into almost $12 million in savings over time. That number is going to look a little bit different depending on how rapidly you deploy the electric bus infrastructure. So we broke it down annually, the 6 buses that you have on order, and then the 55 bus allocation there. So beyond this, you'll see an appendix, and the appendix basically addresses the different rate structures. And just briefly, I would tell you that the rate structures, we looked at 4 different rate structures for you, and found at the previous meeting that we had, what was it, about 2 weeks ago with Mike and Steve, really directed us to option 2. So that's the number that we plugged in here for your fuel costs. But one thing I want to note, and I know it's just down here as a sidelight, but as you grow your fleet here, your cents per kilowatt is going to drop significantly, right? So if you go to 24 buses, you're going to go from this number to this number, right? So as you grow your fleet, your electric costs are actually going to become less per kilowatt. And I'll just go there. So these were the different rates. I mean, I'll give it up. I'm not a rate guy, but we have a rate guys here. But this is what we came up with. And the primary consideration here was the factor is that to put in that 2,500 kVA transformer that you have, you can grow into that for up to 24, 25 buses. Whereas the cheaper, the less expensive versions of that had 1,000 kVA transformers, and you were going to have to add those at some date to grow later on. And who knows what the cost involved would be that later on. So that's why we thought this option 2 was really the most advantageous for you. So we know that the buses are on order. We think, if I'm correct from the last meeting we had, they're to arrive in April, in that window right there, April, May, or somewhere around those timelines.
So there's been a change in that.
Ah.
The timeline arrival is still about the same.
It is, okay, so that's good. We also know that for this, let me just go back to this slide. For these two pieces of infrastructure, there are lead times involved with that. The last check that we have, Osmond, was about 6 months.
Correct.
Right, and so it's holding true to the data that you guys have. So we know that if that lead time of buses is still, let's just call it first quarter of 2020, but you want the infrastructure in either later this year or in the very, very early stages of first quarter, then we're kind of bumping right up against those kind of timelines right now. We had originally heard out there that June was probably pen to paper signed documentation to have us go ahead and order these through the vendors. We'd like a little bit more relief than being right up against it there. So if any of this has changed, please let us know, and we can communicate that to our vendors so they can be prepared.
I have a question.
Yeah, just one.
Can you go back to
Go
the
ahead.
map?
Which one?
The
map?
The map of the yard.
Yes.
So, I noticed the depot chargers are all lined up with the same site as the power station. So as we grow and have to put buses elsewhere and depot chargers elsewhere, how does that fit in the whole scheme of things with what you're able to do throughout the entire parking lot? Would you have to drill underground through to cross the other side to the middle area? Could we put depot chargers
Yes,
in
you
the
have
middle?
to come across.
The left side?
Yes.
Okay.
We looked at it on site, right above where the square is. Show you. Right in here, there's a little triangle space that
Yeah.
really is unutilized. There's a light pole there, some other things that will make a perfect spot to put a second transformer when we get to that. Switch
These
gear.
units right here.
And then the chargers themselves,
Here.
they don't have to be right in front of the buses. The footprint there is tight. We looked at different options. We might actually end up lining them up, some of them in between the buses that in the front there. But with the remote boxes, we can be 500 foot away from the charger and make it all work without a problem. There's flexibility to the design. We can move things around based on your needs.
Actually, we have the ability, and we did this for MARTA, is we gave them a 10-year look. Again, that today, tomorrow, in the future, we gave them a 10-year look. Some of it's aspirational as we go out there, but we could certainly do the same, give you that same 10-year look here for your site planning, and again, we'll call it future-proofing. We'd be more than happy to do that work for you.
So I guess my final part of this question is,
Sure.
if all 55 buses are electric, can you guys support, with the schematics of our yard, 55 buses charging?
You can park them, we can charge them.
Okay.
It's that simple. We'll figure it out.
Yes, sir.
A couple of questions.
You need to go back to a different slide?
Not right, not yet. With the 2,500
KVA charger, right?
Okay, according to the notes in here, that will handle 16 buses.
Very conservative. We don't want to push it too hard.
Okay.
There isn't any of these around anywhere to compare to with any kind of quantity. We suspect we're going to be able to do a lot more out of one transformer than 16.
Okay,
But
so you
that's
could-
the simple math.
You could run it down to half the fleet with that
No.
transformer.
No, I think
24?
we can get, half the
You're
fleet
close
roughly.
to half the fleet. if we're
Yeah,
talking
so
about
what's
55.
what's happening in this segment, I guess the best analogy I can make is, I bought a 47-inch TV, years ago. It cost me a ton of money, right? Right, I could walk into Walmart and buy the same TV for $400 because technology came down.
Actually a better one.
Exactly, so everything becomes more efficient, everything becomes, a different value as you start to look at over the time span that today, tomorrow, and future aspects.
Well, I
of
have
it.
part of my question here.
Yeah.
because There's a lot of this I don't understand, but that looks like it would take care of a fairly good future with just that one installation before we need a second one.
Correct. That's designed that way.
Right. With that level, are we going to see technology change in buses that might actually require less of that kind of charging capacity? Could that wind up at some point charging a lot more buses because of the bus technology changing, or is that not likely to change?
Yeah, so battery technology is continuing to advance at a rapid pace. It's really probably 2.5 times more advanced than where they thought it was going to be, and particularly the charging side of it. One of the criteria that you had in your application was to go to 150 kilowatt chargers in that, that's like the cutting edge of technology right now. Right around the corner is going to be 350. And 350 is going to give faster, right? Thinking of, people who want to experience a fast charge. You're going to be able to charge these buses at the rate that you have here in about 4 hours, which is super aggressive. And when you take a look at that, that means that the batteries have to have a technology in them that they can take that much heat in a very specific time. And that's part of all these things that are tied together. I call it, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? So technology is going to advance. There is an option that we thought this was, what guys, this was 6 years out? More? Less? 5, 6 years out? Right? So then the next wave, and then the waves after that, we're entering into that 10-year window. And yes, technology is going to be different, be more efficient, and it may change by that time.
It sounds like it might be going the opposite direction of what I was thinking, of less demand. It may be more demand, but just to be able to have the faster charge.
That's what everybody wants. That's what the market wants.
So we could wind up needing more transformers faster if we're moving to a faster charge system.
In 10 years, probably. That's the honest answer. In 10 years, probably.
All right. And this,
or at the age of when you're replacing the initial first 6.
This next question.
Sure.
Maybe an obvious answer to it, but I'm just missing. But why use a mobile generator? Why not just have all of that set up as a fixed?
Sure. So the reasoning behind this was not to duplicate costs, because you didn't need to duplicate costs. We could build in everything that you needed on this mobile unit that you're going to take out of the area should the unfortunate circumstance of Matthew happens again, right? So we considered this, and the way that we designed this was to give you to utilize these in your everyday life, right? Rather than put in 4 more. And in that we found considerable savings for you.
The only difference between that and the stationary device is that it's got wheels on it. We put in the same type of enclosure.
So there's no cost differential?
No.
Really?
Set of wheels is all it is. And what it really gives you is the ability to charge your vehicles on the road in the event you're taking everyone out of town.
So I think
but right now there aren't
there
aren't chargers out in the marketplace for you to plug a bus in. There aren't that many out there. Car chargers won't work for you. They won't fit.
So if we have to evacuate buses, we can take the charger with us.
So maybe this would add some clarity. So this is what's inside of the trailer.
4 of those.
This is what's over by the bus.
Those are connected to that.
Yes.
That's the front end of that.
Yes.
But you've got some of these that aren't in the mobile trailer.
Correct. That's right. And when we go back to that slide up here, let me go back to that. These are the other 2 cabinets. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that?
And to be clear, you won't be charging using the mobile generator, the diesel generator.
Yeah,
so the
it's
electricity
connected
flows through
directly
the
to
trailer,
this switchgear.
But the generator is not.
You're not using
So
your
you'll use the
generator.
generator if you
It is
use
mobile
it
alongside.
Matthew comes,
But you
you
gotta
take
go
off
forward.
with this, you park it wherever, you're going to get 4 buses to charge there.
Yeah, rather than having 4 components on the trailer and 4 components next to the building.
You like that?
Put them in the trailer, so you don't have to.
Are you powered the generator? Are you going to be able to just pull up somewhere and plug that into
It's diesel.
powered line? Or
So it's diesel, and yeah, we have all of the necessary cabling here to connect to the buses. Built in.
would you be able, if you had a location, could you hook that into an electrical source instead of using the generator?
You could.
You
It could
need
be
that
done.
2500.
It's wired. How it's being set up today is actually being wired into the switchgear. So you could take that and plug it in anywhere, as long as you have a switchgear to plug it into. Most switchgear isn't designed that way, so you have to build something that way. But this particular case is going to be pre-built that way, so you have a solution that will allow you to charge here, If the power goes out on site, you have a generator that's going to kick in and keep 6 buses charged, even though the lights are out. And in the event of an evacuation, take it with you, and you can go charge anywhere you want in the world. Take it along. It's got 36 hours worth of fuel on board. It's fully automated. It's fully monitored by Georgia Power remotely, so we can take care of it for you, maintain it, monitor it, all of it, as if we were here.
So an expansion of the system would probably make more sense to expand with more mobile units if you're going to want to be able to do an evacuation.
So it's like this. So when I'll just continue to refer to Matthew, right? So we're out in the field, right? We're looking at down lines and regular residential customers, area like that. So we run across a scenario that people who had Nissan Leafs were plugging their Nissan Leaf into their house to keep their freezer alive, to keep their basics alive. You know, not that it was neat, you know, they were just being like, hey, they Googled it, you could do it, so we saw it out there. So not what it's built for, but is there ability to do it? Yeah. In this case, we're building it so you have it both ways. And would you need more mobile generation?
Well, that was my last question, is that if we expand the fleet, if we got up to, you know, sometime after I'm long gone, a 55 bus fleet, wouldn't it make sense to have more than one of these?
Yeah, you would think, but that's that ratio that you would have to consider for evacuating the city through your transit, right?
There's another consideration. As time goes on and this becomes more widespread, the availability of chargers out in the marketplace are going to be there. Today, there isn't. But 10 years from now, when trucks are running on electric, they're going to have these chargers all over the state for trucks to plug in, and it'll be the same charger you plug a bus into. So you may not have the same need down the road for mobile. You may want then only to have on-site generation so that if you lose power, you can keep your chargers running. It's going to see how it plays out. There's a lot of things changing. You had asked before about charging infrastructure changing, and I see there's one possibility that may happen. For a lot of the bus companies, the manufacturers are talking about fast chargers on the road, where they're not very convenient in how they operate. I could see them becoming a underground type charger. When a bus pulls up, it gets a charge while it's unloading, loading passengers, even if it's only for 5 minutes. And then changing what we need here in order to keep the buses running, and changing the battery sizes, because smaller batteries is lower cost. If you can keep them charged on the road while they're running around town, that gives you more range without having to have the same battery pack. So there's a lot of things happening in the marketplace.
Osmond's getting way out there.
I understand.
he's getting out there now. But I will say this.
With everything being built into the roadway, so everybody's charging all the time anyway.
That's something that probably will eventually happen.
Actually, there's a technology park that's being developed that's all about what's happening next, and Sweden has it right now where it's a solar panel, charging panel that's built into the roadway. But that's pretty expensive right now. But I think what you'll find sooner than that is what's happening right after electric buses are long-haul trucking. They're pretty much right in front of us, and they're going to be using that same kind of charging technology that you see here in buses. And so as that starts to happen, you're going to see more and more infrastructure out in more and more places, certainly in the main corridors in Georgia. I mean, there's well over, just for the auto side of it, I mean, we could have brought in a map of it, but there's over 3,700 charging depots for cars in Georgia that you wouldn't suspect, but every time you drive past Mentor, you're driving past electric vehicle chargers. You wouldn't think so because it's Mentor, right? I know everything better, but... Yeah. Entertainment value, what little it was. We could come down as often as you want, and we could take you into a much deeper dive, and maybe that's where we build today, tomorrow, in the future, and we can take you through different types of charging technology, as much capacity as you want.
It sounded like one of the things you were saying was we're kind of on a deadline for making a decision.
Yeah, so the technology isn't going to change. We're talking about the change in technology is going to be, the change in your technology is going to be, I'm sorry, past this. Right? Which is, how far out is that?
5 years.
Terry, is that what your TAM plan says, 5 years?
So our fleet replacement is 5 larger buses a year.
Mhm.
So if we get 5 or 6, we're looking at more like 3. But we do have additional infrastructure costs built into the capital plan. So a couple years quicker than your scenario, but still approximately the same.
In line. This is what's driving everything right here.
That's what's gonna take,
Yeah.
that's what's gonna take time to get installed.
I think you got a question in the front.
Yes. Sorry.
My question is, how much interaction does I guess our employees have to have with regards to the charging and everything like that?
Good question.
There's a plug on that little gray box, to your right on the bulletin board there you see the wire hanging down. They plug it in. The charger is a smart charger. It basically has a computer inside of it. It actually talks to the battery, and it sees it when it's been connected, and then it turns itself on. So there isn't much for the employee to do. When it's time to unplug it, if it's not complete, there's a stop button. They hit the stop button, it shuts off the charger so that when they pull the plug out of the bus, there's no opportunity for any sort of flash or a spark. Now, they do it without doing so, it will actually shut itself off so fast that there won't be an issue. But we prefer they use the button and not take a chance.
So this, let me get back to, so this technology right here is old, right? I mean, it's like electric forklift truck. I mean, it's the same thing, right? So nothing new here. So it's, if they can plug it in, they can operate it. The great thing about the other side of it, as Osmond mentioned, is that is the intelligence now between batteries and chargers. They talk to each other now, where they didn't in the past. So it's going to know the state of charge, meaning how much charge is in that battery when it gets to that charging depot, and it's going to charge it responsibly from there. So if it has a low state of charge, let's say it's 30% or something like that, it's going to put more energy into that battery faster at that point until it gets up to 80%. And then after that, it's going to tail off because it's going to want that battery to maintain a healthy temperature. Right? So the charging technology today is so smart that it handles all that.
And my next question is, I guess with this technology here, what's the I see you have a 5-year, 60-month warranty on all equipment and everything like that. What's the average life expectancy of that equipment if it's being constantly used?
I would just go back to the off-road side of it.
Yeah, the manufacturer's warranty on the equipment is 5 years. Expected life of that type of equipment is probably going to be no more than 10 years. It's a lot of energy running through it. 150 kW is a big amount of energy. Just think of 10 houses. 10 houses in summer in Savannah, I'm talking, everything's running. So it's not going to last forever, but they will last 10 years, I would expect, without any issues whatsoever. The manufacturer will extend the warranty even longer. They include service plans, they include everything. They want to make sure you're happy also, because if it's not working, then it's not going to be technology they're going to be able to move forward.
And with that being said, you said service plans. Where will we see, as far as service plans are concerned, with regards to this, rather than we do it in-house, having somebody who is familiar with the equipment to do the service for us?
I would prefer you do it through a service plan. You know why? Because we have experts who will handle it for you.
I agree. That's what I'm asking.
And that's kind of where we're at after having long discussions with your folks. That's what they want from the power company. They want us to be the expert to make sure that this stuff works. They run the buses. We'll make sure the charging is working and that your buses are getting charged every night. That's going to be our responsibility.
So where would I see the service plan at then? That's my question.
The service plan for the chargers themselves will actually come from ABB since it's their equipment.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, the other part of it is kind of behind the curtain. So, you know, Mike and Steve and Grant, they had specifics particularly to that application where they needed to have enough battery power put on those buses to achieve your application. And that's why we went with this vendor for that. So there's a, let's call it, there's a fine dance between the combination of battery technology and charger technology, right? And The buses need to run for 12 years. The batteries need to last for 12 years. So the charging infrastructure needs to treat these batteries in a very healthy environment for over that long period of time. And so that's where the expertise of Georgia Power comes in, and coupling you with vendors that we've worked with in the past, because it's an integrated part of the technology.
I mean, I would like to see where the batteries, in theory, last as long as the buses in theory.
That's the point.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of examples of this technology. It's just most of it resides in China and in Europe, because they were the first ones to advance this technology over there. So they have millions of hours of data based off of this technology.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a couple questions.
We need to change slides?
No, maybe not. So you had, just 'cause I think that's an interesting, so in 4 hours we'll be pumping 10 houses worth of power into a bus? Is that kind of?
It won't be quite that much. Yeah, well, I expect it to charge 400 kWh each night at each bus. 400 kWh is enough to run my house in the summer for a week. It's a lot of energy.
Dang.
The bus has a capability of 660 kW, but I don't expect it to be all the way run down.
Yeah.
The way they planned out their routes, it should run about 400 at night, maybe a hair less.
And that will allow a bus to run for how many miles, or how long? A day.
400 kW should be 160 miles, which is the average route. That battery is capable of running that bus over 200 miles in a day.
Okay.
How many miles?
Over 200 a day. 2.2 kilowatts per mile. That's with AC on now. It's for them still.
Typically what we do is and I think Grant and Steve did a lot of this work also. We take, when we partner with our customers, we take the toughest application that can happen, right? We take that, and that's the target. And then knowing that anything other than that will work, right? So that's our approach to it.
When we did evacuate the buses, where did we go? Augusta. So maybe one idea would be to talk to Augusta and say, hey, can we charge you 200, one of these there? Maybe. Just throwing that out
That's
there.
typically where we go, unless the hurricane kind of head towards Augusta.
It might be interesting to partner with a couple cities that we would go to and just say, hey, we'd like to just have this pre-installed.
Or
Don't mind.
just have them doing the same thing. So
Yeah.
Macon already has two, so that'll be a way to go.
Perfect. Just
So,
go to Macon.
even when we don't use the buses to evacuate citizens, we have a responsibility to remove the buses from danger.
Yeah.
So we would take the whole fleet away from the storm. That's our largest dollar asset. It's over $40 million.
That's interesting, because obviously a lot of the work that Georgia Power does is in our municipalities. So we'd be more than willing to put together possibly a forum for interested parties, because as you see here, there's a lot of people that are going to be in electric buses, right? So we could use this as a platform to bring them together to talk about how all the municipalities work nicely with one another as we go through this technology.
I mean, if they all have infrastructure, then wherever the hurricane goes, all those people can evacuate to other areas.
Potentially, everyone's going to have a need at some point. You're exactly right.
Central
That's an
Georgia.
interesting concept. Yeah.
Central Georgia knows now that they may have to evacuate.
Yeah. The only difference would be for like a customer like Hartsfield Jackson, which the buses that they ordered have proprietary charging.
Yeah.
Right, but everybody else is pretty much open at this point.
So then, kind of two different things, but
That's interesting.
do you guys have any comments that you want to sort of bring up now that maybe it'd be interesting to hear sort of how the conversations went, and anything that you think maybe the board should know, and how this presentation was put together, and information we might need to know. And then as a second question, it looks like, so we've got 6 electric buses coming in Q1 of 2020, and that means we've got 49 left to purchase in the next 12 years. So it would be, and these have big upfront costs in terms of the buses are more expensive. We also have to include the infrastructure for them, which is what this is all about. But though we are saving money on fuel, I totally understand that may not, the fuel savings at this time may not make up for the investments we have to do to move over to electrification, but it's still important that we do.
It's not just the fuel, it's the maintenance.
And the maintenance. So it would be interesting to me, like if we could have like a graph of expenses and savings over
As time goes
12
on.
years.
Yep.
I think we
When do
have
we
that.
break
We
even?
have a
We've been
projection
down that path.
that we could send to you from the initial presentation a few years ago.
That's
So,
what I'm looking for.
Yeah, we've been working on this project in-house a couple of years.
Mhm.
So as we get closer to pulling the trigger,
Mhm.
details change.
Yeah.
One of the details that changed was the need for initial infrastructure that we did not plan for initially. So when you talk about 6 buses, you've got a trade-off when you're talking about 1.8 million in infrastructure that's needed now as
Yeah.
opposed to 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
So there'll be some kind of combination of infrastructure and buses that will arrive in the 18-month timeframe, and the capital cost of it is covered by CERTA, the FTA low and no emissions grant, and some grant money from the MPO.
Mhm.
So all of those large $1 million capital costs will be assisted by grants.
And that money wouldn't have been available if we were just purchasing more diesel buses.
Would have been, but
Would
the
have been.
board made the choice to replace all expiring and
Good
used
job, board.
buses with electric.
All right.
Clint, maybe
And they don't
you
cover
and Dietrich
gas.
can, most of the board has been down this road.
Yeah.
And we're kind of running out of time.
Sure.
Maybe you and
Mhm.
Dietrich would want to sit down with CAT staff
Mhm.
and get brought up to date on this whole electric bus
Yep.
program and the cost savings over the life of the buses.
The evolution of where we started 2 years ago and where we're at now.
And then finally, I would just say that I do support pulling the trigger on this sooner than later, so we are
We're aligned.
able to
Yeah.
get the buses on the road as soon as they come in. So I don't know what that looks like, but I'm all down. Great
It
job.
looks like a compliant
Yeah.
procurement that follows all of the funding sources rules.
Yeah,
And
but-
it may take a little more time than we all would like.
That's
Any other questions for Georgia Power before we?
Yeah, I got one. On the total maintenance and repair for a 60-month period, at the 10,000 plus annual, does that cover? What does that cover? The first phase of this?
Total maintenance repairing basically gives you peace of mind. If it breaks, it's ours to fix. If it needs maintenance, we take care of it. Whatever is required in that time frame belongs to Georgia Power to manage. Do I fix everything in-house personally? No. But we'll manage to take care of every last thing part of it. Now, a lot of the stuff is ours. Some of it's not. We have other entities within our company that does generators. That's not part of Georgia Power. It's Power Secure. It's a sister company. They'll manage the generator. They'll manage the engine. They'll manage all of it. So that when I say total maintenance repair, anything goes wrong, it's one call.
And that's a hard
So,
one call.
as we add buses to the fleet, does this number change?
Well, the total maintenance repair is actually for infrastructure. So as the infrastructure grows, that number will change. But the initial installation is good for a minimum of 16 buses, though I think we're going to be able to put a whole lot more than that through one transformer. It's a large transformer.
Is the transformer already there?
No, that is a big green box about 6 foot tall. You would have noticed it.
It takes lead time.
Understood.
Those we have in stock now. Those don't have a lead time. I can have one here tomorrow. Everything else has a lead time.
Okay, any other questions for Georgia Power? Thank you very much. That was really very interesting. It was
Well, thank
good
you.
to finally see it.
Yeah, and our takeaways will be that we'll come up with, work with you and today, tomorrow, and the future 10-year look at it, just to kind of look at that. We'll also introduce you to EVER. I think that would be important so you can see electrification as it applies to on-road all the way up to 2030 from our view of it, from our village view of it. So thank you for your time. And again, if you have any questions at all, this is the team that you get in touch with, and day to day, every day, Mr. Duvall here is your guy.
I think add to that list, coordinating with the other communities.
Yeah, I think that was a great takeaway.
For the mutual support.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
What's that?
There's no making our.
We will.
Plug it straight to the meeting.
Because this is gonna be at night, that's when Van Vogel hits his peak, so.
So Beverly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Be here.
Thank you.
Sometimes somebody else.
And thanks.
You'll be looking for that.
Very exciting.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Very exciting.
Okay, so next up is Grant with the presentation. You're going to have a hard one to follow, Grant, so no pressure.
What's up, bro?
Jay, get a picture in here.
Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone. Switching gears just a little bit, no pun intended. Last month we wrapped up phase 1 of the Let's Go Designing Better Transit Together initiative. And this morning I'm going to share a summary of the public input that we received during this phase. Jarrett Walker and Associates has developed a 50-page report just on public input that we received, and they just completed it. So we do have some hard copies available if you do want one now. We will also send around an electronic copy probably later today. All right, so what was phase 1 about? Just to quickly summarize, there were 2 main pieces of phase 1. Hard copies, okay. Hey Aiden, can you run into my office real quick and grab the hard copy, phase 1 summaries? Thank you.
No problem.
So phase 1 really published 2 main reports. The first one was the Transit Choices Report. You all should have received a copy of that. It is available on our website. This was basically the existing conditions. So where are we now? How are our routes performing? Just a general summary of where we are today. And then it introduces these key trade-offs that we've talked to you all about, the whole ridership versus coverage transit system.
Thank you.
Then the second piece of phase 1 was the public input summary, which that's what I'm going over today. Public input, we had a multifaceted approach here. The first thing that we did was we had our kickoff with a stakeholder advisory committee meeting. This is where we convened over 40 individuals from various organizations within the community. And we invited them for pretty much a full day meeting to discuss this project and to introduce them to ridership versus coverage. Shortly thereafter, we had a community open house. That was actually the next day, and we invited the general public to introduce the project to them. For those who could not make it to that open house, we had a webinar and pretty much covered the exact same topics. We then had some community meetings. Our staff, we attend regular meetings throughout the community, and so as part of those agendas, we made sure that we were included in those meetings, and we were able to introduce these different groups to our project. And then probably the meat and potatoes of this public input process was our first public survey, which we closed last month. So down here at the bottom, you can see we did the Transit Choices Report in the winter, phase 1 public input on these key choices. We actually have already developed the network concepts, so we are right here today. And just to give you some a quick idea of the different input that we received, the Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting, again, we had about 40 representatives at that meeting. At the Community Open House, we had about 40 as well. At the webinar, I believe we had about 15 to 20 maybe who attended, and it's gotten over 50 views on YouTube today. The community meetings total, at those meetings, we had over 200 attendees.
In the survey number 1, we had over 600 responses from the community. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but because you all should be familiar with this. This is really the key trade-off, and it's ridership versus coverage. Basically, with the network on the left, when you're redesigning a transit network, this is one option that you can take, and it's to get as many riders as possible on our buses. In order to do that, though, you have to focus your transit services on the areas that present the best conditions for high ridership. So where are the people living and where are the jobs? Unfortunately, doing this, a lot of folks in some neighborhoods and outlying areas get left out. They don't get transit service. But again, the goal is to maximize ridership, and that's the concept on the left. The concept on the right is high coverage. We're not as concerned about ridership here. We're more concerned about giving some level of service to everyone in our community. To do so, we have to have lots of buses scattered throughout the community, so the quality of service isn't great, but that's not necessarily the goal. It's to provide some level of service to everyone. So this was the big trade-off that we introduced to the public. Another way to put this, and this was we covered this in all of our meetings and in the survey, was do you prefer a shorter walk or a shorter wait? If you prefer a shorter walk to your bus stop, then chances are the quality of the service that we provide to that individual is not going to be as good, because people want to walk less. They want to walk a block or two to the nearest bus stop. So we have to have bus stops all over the place. And to do that, we can't run high quality service to all of those bus stops. On the other end, if you prefer a shorter wait and you're willing to walk a little further, we can provide better quality service. So the bus is going to come more frequently. The routes will run later into the evening, all day on the weekends. This was kind of the trade-off spun a different way. We wanted to know how individuals felt about this. All right, so here are the results. First, I'm going to cover the Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting that we had. The first question, we had these interactive clickers that we gave to participants in the audience. And the first question we asked them was, how would you want CAT to balance ridership and coverage goals within the existing budget? So as you can see, this one at the top, and throughout the presentation, I've indicated the top choice with a little purple symbol right here. The top choice from the Stakeholder Advisory Committee was shift towards higher ridership and less coverage. So this means higher frequencies and longer spans. 50% of the respondents chose that selection. Keep the status quo, so maintain what we're currently doing, which is estimated to be about 50% focused on high ridership, 50% on coverage. We had 17% of the stakeholders choose that selection, and then we did have 33% say we actually want you all to shift towards wider coverage. So lower the frequencies, that's okay, shorter spans of service and lower ridership, but go into areas that currently don't already have service. Second question, and we did ask a few different questions to the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, but I couldn't include all these different questions in this presentation, so please take a look at the report. But I did want to highlight this one as well. We asked the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, what were your top 3 priorities if CAT received new funding? So we gave them a few different options, and individuals were able to select 3 of them and rank them. And the majority ranked higher frequencies as their top priority. Second were more shelters and other bus stop amenities. Making service more reliable was very important to the stakeholders. Wider coverage got a fair amount of responses as well. And then to close it out, more service at night and more service on the weekend was at the bottom. So after the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, the next day we had that community open house. And for those of you who were there, you remember that we had a bunch of different presentation boards, and this was a photo of one of those boards that we created with our consultants. And we basically just asked participants the exact same questions. How do you feel about ridership and coverage? and we gave them little stickers here at the bottom. It's a little hard to see in this photo, but they got to put their sticker where they thought that we should land on the sliding scale between ridership and coverage. The median was probably right around here somewhere, so it was a little bit of a shift towards ridership, but we did have a fair amount who wanted us to shift towards coverage. So it wasn't a definitive, everybody wants us to go towards ridership-focused services. It was a little bit more balanced. The second one of the other boards that we had was this walking versus waiting. So we just asked them in a different format. And this one, we actually had a very definitive, people are willing to walk a little bit further to have higher quality service. We had 5 dots right here for those who can't see it. We had 1 right here, and then the vast majority fell right here. So the median was definitely longer walks but shorter waits. And then last but not least, we also asked how should CAT prioritize the improvements if we were to get new funding. And this is kind of hard to see because we gave all the participants 4 stickers and they could place them wherever they wanted. So we put it into a bar chart format. This is the exact same data. We put it into a bar chart format, and this shows you the results. So at the community open house, the top priority was actually making service more reliable, which was different than the stakeholder advisory committee. Now they did want higher frequency, that came in second, adding more shelters, which was also high for the stakeholders, covering areas that don't have service, so that's coverage, and then more service at night, more service on Sundays, and more service on Saturdays to close it out. All right, so the public survey. So this again was the meat and the potatoes of our public input phase 1. We did receive over 600 results, and this was one of the questions that we asked. Again, we asked a bunch of different questions, but the question was, would you prefer more routes covering more places or frequency and span investments that make existing routes more useful? So here we didn't just say ridership or coverage. We gave them a little bit more flexibility and broke it into 4 different options. And the number 1 selection was somewhat more frequency. So they didn't want us to just go all in more frequent service. They didn't want us to shift towards more frequency, but keep it a little bit closer to the middle. Second highest response rate was 28%, with definitely more frequent service and longer hours. The third was more routes to more places, and then the fourth was somewhat more routes. So here, again, we did the whole walking versus waiting, and I'm breaking it down as the report does. The report, it's a 50-page report, and it breaks down each question by demographic as well. So it does a cross-tabulation and says here, out of all the responses, walking versus waiting, up here in the top left, 75% of the responses we received said we want to minimize our waiting, which means longer walks. And that left 25% saying we want to minimize our walks and have longer waits. Then we broke it down by African American respondents, 65 and older, folks who use the bus system more than 5 days in a month, just to see if there are some key takeaways from these different groups that are responding. And to some degree, there were some differences. African American respondents are a little more likely to want to minimize walking, with 35% as opposed to the 25% from the group total. Here, the 65 and older population was a little more willing to, or less willing to walk, but not by a whole lot. This is the 28% minimized walking compared to the total, which is 25. And then this one, which is obviously very important to us, are actual riders, the people who use the service currently. They were a little less willing to walk than the total, coming in at 28%. But as you can see on all 4 of these graphs, there was a clear need or want, I guess, to minimize waiting, and that would require longer walks. So with this, it was, again, the exact same question, but we, instead of just, do you want to minimize walking or waiting, we gave them a few different options. And what we found out was that our survey responses said they definitely prefer shorter waits. 38% of the folks said that. Some people, 23%, the second highest, said, I will do whatever gets me to my final destination soonest, even if it means a really long walk. So combined, that's about 61% right there. They definitely prefer shorter waits or want to do whatever it takes to get to their final destination fastest. I usually prefer shorter waits was 16%, and then to close it out, we had 10%. I usually prefer short walks. 8% said I definitely prefer shorter walks, and then I'm not so sure or I have no preference. That's 5%. And the last question I'm going to go over was, if CAT had additional money, what would you spend it on first? And so with here, we actually said the lower number means a higher priority. So the highest priority from survey respondents were higher frequency service. Second was making service more reliable. So this becomes a common theme throughout all the different vehicles we used, was that people do want more reliable service, whether it was the stakeholders, the folks who attended the community meeting, or the survey respondents. Coming in third was the covering more places that don't currently have service. This is coverage. So that was a little bit higher than what we saw from the other two groups. More shelters and bench amenities, that's been important for all the different groups. And then closing it out, more service at night, more service on Saturdays, and more service on Sundays. So again, it's a 50-page report. We'll send it around, and I can print out more copies, more hard copies if you all want them. I should also mention that I forgot to mention this earlier. We also engaged our bus operators early in this process. We had safety meetings in November where our team presented the Let's Go project to every single operator who attended those meetings. And then in January and February, we also did our own mini open house for bus operators where we set up in the break room over at Cat Central. And we were there all day for 3 days, and we had a booth, and we just wanted to talk to the different operators and find out what they liked about our current system, what they didn't like, what they wanted to see changed. And we received over 100 comments from bus operators through both of those engagements. So it's not just the public. We're trying to look in-house as well to see what people want to see changed. And I guess next steps, the concepts report, which is the very beginning of phase 2, should be released fairly soon. That's going to be a very large document, and basically we come up with 2 different service alternatives, one that's focused on ridership and one that's focused on coverage, and they look drastically different. I'm going to be totally honest with all of you. A ridership-based network, a lot of areas in our community lose service. The trade-off there is the downtown area and closer to the south side, they get much better service. So are we willing to switch to that type of model where some people are going to lose service, but a lot of people get much better service? That's one option. The other option is basically doing what we're doing currently with our ridership versus coverage breakdown, but doing it better. So there are some ways that we can improve with our current layout and our need to service different neighborhoods, and we've made some improvements that we feel comfortable with. But these networks look very, very different. So this next phase, we're going to just ask operators, ask the community, ask everyone what they feel about these 2 different scenarios. So be on the lookout for that in the next couple weeks, and I will take any questions if you have them.
Okay, Bill Peak has been off and on, so it's Bill.
Brad, what methods was used to get attendance?
So the Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting that we had was an invite-only meeting, and we brainstormed internally with our consultants on various organizations to send invites to. I think we invited about 60 different organizations locally, and we had 40 actually attend. That's how we did the stakeholders. The community open house was open to everyone. We advertised it wherever we could, website, usual vehicles for that. And then the survey responses, we did a web-based survey, and we sent it out through our stakeholders. We asked them to send it to their constituents. We posted it on our website, and then we also had hard copies here and over at Cat Central. And we did walk the platform to try to get as many current riders as possible to fill out the surveys. We got a lot of hard copies. I want to say about 100 of the 600 responses we got were actually from customers right here. So we tried to hit as many different areas as we could. Our initial target was to get about 500 survey responses, and we got over 600, so we feel really good about that.
We also engaged the media heavily during this first phase, so they also helped us get word out about what we were doing.
Well, that's most important, because having meetings with riders, on a number of occasions it was put out, we didn't know that. We're just finding out at this monthly meeting about the information that is most important. And y'all do a good job, but we need to make sure that we have more of the riders and possibly others, to be brought along also.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we, as you said, we need to get as many of our current riders aware of this project and get their input. We might have been able to do a little bit better job on the first phase. We did use a number of different vehicles to reach them, but we did hear that some people, were unaware. And we actually had to extend the survey a week or two, because we did hear from some groups that say that they were unaware. So we extended the deadline to fill out the survey. I will say, though, that phase 2 is the most important phase of this entire project, because we need to know what that balance is between ridership and coverage. With this first survey, it's just kind of high level, conceptual. What are your thoughts on these two different options? Now they're actually going to see 2 possible transit networks, and they're going to see whether or not where they live, whether they're going to get service or not. And those that do fall into like the ridership network within walking distance to those routes, they're going to get much better service. So some people are going to love it, but then the areas that lose service or get reduced service, they're not going to like it. So this is going to be a very critical phase for us, this phase 2, and we're going to really have to get the word out to get even more survey responses, especially from our customers in this next phase.
Bill? 2 things, but along that line of communication, I don't know whether you or Patricia is the right source, but any of this information that I can have links to, I want to post to make sure we show what the results were from the fact that we did all this work and what the results were. Second question, the stakeholders, community meeting, and the survey results were pretty consistent. There's minor variations, but the results were pretty consistent throughout that. But you didn't show where the operators felt in there. So how does what the responses you got from operators compare with the results from the other groups?
So we didn't ask operators ridership or coverage. We did have the board, and I think our open house that we did with the operators was shortly after the community meeting, so they could see what people in the community thought about the ridership versus coverage. But a lot of the operators, they had way more detailed observations and critiques of the current service. They said, don't turn left here, go straight. We get no riders from this one neighborhood. Why are we still going there? There are all these very detailed observations, and we've documented every single one. But we didn't ask them just ridership or coverage. How do you?
But within their comments, did you get any sense of if there's one position or the other that they might support more, if they had a feeling about that, or just, I guess, you know, the consistency in the other groups makes a strong case, you know, for the majority opinions. But these are the pros.
Well, and I don't want to speak for the operators. I think a lot of them probably, for these routes that go way far out into our community, those are really hard routes for the operators because of taking restroom breaks. And it's really, really hard for us to manage those restroom breaks and make sure that they have appropriate layover time just because we're asking them to do so much. So from that perspective, I could see, and some operators told me that they would like to see shorter routes because it gives them more opportunities for those breaks that they need. At the same time, some operators wanted to know, well, are certain neighborhoods going to be cut out of service? And if so, that's a problem. I mean, I think over the years, some operators, have grown relationships with different members in the community, which is a good thing. And they're sympathetic to some of these community members who would ultimately lose service if we went to more of a high ridership network. So I don't think they were definitive. I don't think they were all like, yeah, all ridership driven service, let's do that, or the other end. They fell somewhere in the middle.
And as we present these two models, are we going to be talking at all about if we move toward ridership and we start reducing some coverage areas, or as part of this presentation, are we going to be talking about any kind of on-demand service, or?
We have, so as you'll see in the concepts report that's coming out, when we did a core design retreat back in February, where our consultants came on site and we got operations involved, we got safety involved, planning, different departments internally, and we brought in some other technical experts in the community, such as the MPO, the Planning Commission, City of Savannah, the county, and that was brought up, was if a certain area loses service, can we cover them with an alternative form of transportation, such as an on-demand service? And we are proposing on-demand service in a certain area, maybe two areas, just because the way the roadways are configured, and this is really, it's mostly West Chatham, the way the roadways are configured out there, it's very, very challenging to do any sort of route that makes sense to anyone. So the alternative would be we'd find a good location on in West Chatham, possibly the airport. If we were to get into cooler, might be the outlet mall. And that's a central location that we would then have on-demand service coming and bringing people to that central location. So that is, we are proposing that.
Just seems like that, that it's more likely to get considered both if there's an alternative available. If there's no alternative, then anybody that needs service in that area is just not going to be able to consider anything else.
Yeah, I mean, the challenges with the ridership alternative, there are a lot of areas of service. And if we were to propose on-demand service to those areas that lost service, we would have to pull away so much service from the ridership-driven service that it just doesn't even look like ridership-driven service anymore. Because this whole entire project is budget neutral. What can we do to improve with our current budget? And people will lose if we go to the ridership network or some variation of the ridership network. People will lose service. There's no doubt about it. If you move that bar just a little bit towards ridership-driven service, people will lose service. There's no doubt about it. But with the coverage-driven model, our goal was nobody loses service. We're just making some improvements to the current network, but nobody loses service.
But everybody gets poor service.
But everybody gets poor service for the most part, unless you live, right on Abercorn.
Okay, I think Jay was next.
All right. I just want to be clear, going into phase two, that there is a distinct understanding between frequency, ridership, and coverage. Because we're not making sure that we're making decisions versus ridership versus coverage. We're not really doing any changes. Number two, this is Chatham area transit. not Savannah area transit.
Absolutely.
Meaning we should be looking at coverage for the whole county. Fastest growing areas are the west side. Well, and it's not just my side, west side, it's Pooler, Port Wentworth, and those areas in between Pooler and City of Savannah.
Yep.
So I know we're not really doing a lot as far as investment is concerned going into those new unincorporated areas. However, we still need to have in our forethought when we're talking to stakeholders and people in the community that that's the development we're getting ready to go into. With that housing development that's out there, 204, I mean, ridership, the nearest bus is probably a quarter mile to a mile away. And so I know that the kind of individuals that's going out there are going to depend on service. And if these situations aren't incorporated into these plans or these strategies, and then letting the stakeholders know and community folk know, we're just going to lose effort in all those efforts we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And expansion is out there. I mean, that's where it's going.
Yeah. So, so as part of the survey, we had an open-ended response area. So if anybody had just general comments that they wanted to type in or write in the hard copy surveys, they could do so. We received a lot, and the actual responses that we got are in this report, so you can look at them. But we did get a lot of people who said that they wanted service to more areas on the west side. You know, obviously the outlet mall is a huge one. There, you know, the ports and other employment centers on the west side. There is a need there. But just to remind everyone of kind of what our rules are for this project as it currently stands now, we are looking at our current service district. And we have briefed our consultants that it is possible that that will change very, very soon. As soon, you know, as maybe in a couple months or so. And when that happens, we are ready to then all of a sudden take the boundaries off, extend it countywide, and change the scope of this project a little bit to include those areas. So we've had conversations with them. They're totally aware of the possibility of that happening. And yeah, well, once we know for certain that that's going to happen, then we'll do it.
And in phase 2, I'm going to be looking at the verbiage that we're making sure we're letting people know there's a difference between coverage and ridership. Because if we're stressing ridership, people are going to lean to what's being stressed. So we need to be fair and partial for what
Sure. Well, what you're going to see with this phase 2, we're not as much going to describe ridership and coverage and the trade-offs anymore. We're going to show them with a map, and people will be able to, like, if the whole ridership versus coverage concept thing is just you can't figure it out in your mind, you will be able to see on a map if your you know, job center or if where you live loses service, and we'll even show, you know, the bus will be operating from this time to this time on this day, and so people will get an idea of how it impacts their daily lives.
Thank you.
Dr. Halloran?
I've been noticing driving out on Chatham Parkway, there's a lot of new development out there, and I know how we're set up for now. How is that technology corridor going to affect all this as they expand that? Are we part of that?
On Chatham Parkway?
State designation of the technology corridor?
Yes.
That's been expanded. That was initially just along either side of 95. That's been expanded substantially now.
Yeah, but how is that going to affect us putting service out there? Because we probably have none out there now.
We do have some service on Chatham Parkway. It doesn't extend all the way, and the service levels aren't great.
But are we planning for that? Because that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think in
goes.
both alternatives, we have service going down Chatham Parkway. I think the ridership network, I'm not totally sure of.
You do have the jail out there, and they.
Yeah, the challenge with Chatham Parkway is just it's a roadway configuration thing. It's really hard to get to, and so you know we did what we could, but those areas on the west side, I mean, the roadways just develop once you get outside of the gridded pattern of downtown.
Sticking roads everywhere.
Yeah, the roads are windy and they're just really hard to get to. So we did what we could, but it was a challenge.
And when will we see those maps?
They should be coming out. Staff is looking at them right now, and we're sending
before the next board meeting.
Oh yeah, it should be released before the next board meeting.
Brent, you might want to mention when the second phase kicks off, week of April 8th,
That's right.
when our consultants will be here again.
Yeah, so the week of
Survey?
April 8th, that Tuesday, which I think is the 8th, right, or is that the 9th?
I think that's,
9th? The 9th? Yeah, so Tuesday, April 9th in the morning, we will have stakeholder advisory committee meeting number 2. So we bring that group back. We're going to probably share the results from the public input from phase 1, and then we start getting their thoughts on these 2 different networks that we developed. And then on that Thursday, the 11th, we have our next big community event. More details are coming about that, but this is going to be our largest public event that we have throughout the entire process. And details are coming together pretty quick, and we're going to need all the help we can get from you all getting the word out, because we need as many people there as possible, especially current riders. And then, so that week we're also doing a presentation at a city council workshop that Thursday morning on the 11th. And then we're also scheduled to do a presentation to the county commission that Friday, April 12th. So while our consultants are in town, we're trying to make the best use of their time, and so we're scheduling meetings that week as well.
Okay, any other questions for Grant before we move on?
Yeah, I got some.
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Great, I'll move quickly. Some of these are questions, some of these are statements. I'm interested in hearing more on what bus operators say. I'm also interested in seeing a demographics breakdown of the survey respondents.
That you will find in the report.
Great. Are we advertising on our own buses?
yes.
Okay. So there is another survey coming?
Yes, the survey, and the next survey will show the maps.
Okay.
Which one do you prefer?
I think another important graphic or number to be continuously putting out there is how is the difference between the number of people with access to high frequency in one of these maps versus the other map. I think that's a difficult thing to get across. People see a lot of lines, people like a lot of lines, but with a lot of lines also means that you have less high frequency transit. So I think it's important that we are very upfront. And I'm totally going with what Jay is saying on this, is that we use all the tools in our arsenal to get these fairly complex but kind of simple ideas out there in very visible ways.
So to respond to that one, in the concepts report, which is coming out soon, Jarrett Walker has developed a bunch of different maps that they call them isochromes, and basically they put they're kind of bubble maps. What they do is they put a person on the map in various areas of our community, and they can calculate how quickly that person can get to different locations within 15 minutes on the bus.
I also think having a text statement where you could say, in our ridership goal, X amount of people will have access to high frequency transit. In the coverage goal, X amount of people will have coverage to high frequency transit, just so we can kind of get that out there in a variety of ways, visibly, text, and just being able to say it out loud.
Sure.
And then I also think, just another thing, if we continue catering to bad urban design, hashtag West Side, we'll never encourage these municipalities to adopt better design. And so I think we kind of need to be, the roads are where they are already, but if we continue to just like, okay, I guess we'll provide transit for you, even though this is really difficult for us to do, I think we got to be really upfront. And this is a great lead, having this conversation, this redesign, to get into these rooms, to be having these conversations. Stop designing cities this way if you want good transit. And additionally, I thought the most important thing about the conversation we had when Garrett Walker was down here was when she said, how much would it cost to have both goals? It would be $6 million. And that for me was sort of like, interesting. Now I've got a number, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 7, but the whole budget neutral aspect of this is interesting. And I think it's also a way to lead forward in a conversation about if you want both of these goals, it's going to require more money.
Okay, Bill, I think last question?
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on something Clinton said, is this idea of continuing to support bad design. One of the things that we've talked about, and I don't know how we really get up, municipalities on board with this, but to talk about the transit routes, transit-oriented development routes, where, we could commit certain routes to say, okay, if you're going to do development here, we're going to be there. But to also make the point, if you want to go over here and create some low-income tax subsidized housing, you should not assume that you're going to get bus service there. And the reason I bring that up is there's a development plan I saw the other day for an area just next to Hudson Hill, and they've got a street grid laid out, and they've got a transit stop listed in their grid, and there's no bus route there now. They're just making assumptions that they can get that when they open that development, when they start that development. So somehow we need to make sure people understand, just because you build something doesn't mean we're coming.
We need to be the rock that other people break up. That's hard.
I guess the feedback, how much influence or how much conversation do we have with NPC if they're the ones who do all the stuff like that?
They don't. I mean, the only thing NPC does is unincorporated county and the city of Savannah. Any of these other municipalities don't participate in NPC.
Well, then what about those other municipalities? I guess we have service in, how much do we play in whatever their NPC is or whatever that is? You know what I'm saying?
That would just be Garden City.
Okay, and then Garden City.
Well, I should say that within the last year, we've been included in way more conversations than previous years.
Right, and
I
I just think
we're making improvements.
Right, we need to continue doing that because people need to know. Just you're talking about Chatham Parkway. There's a tax subsidized, low income, big housing project going out there right now, and I'm sure there's an assumption that there'll be bus service. Nobody ever asked. Nobody ever made that part of their planning.
So if we do that, then we just do that for the next one. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Grant, this was interesting presentation. I think when you do your next phase two, public input's going to be really interesting.
Are we going to be talking about marketing for, or do you have any, are you in the system?
That's coming.
All right.
Be calm.
Easy.
Just so excited.
Okay, I think we're going to move on to a few action items.
I don't know.
Two action items. The first is the SPLOST funding assignments. So Curtis, before you lead us into that, can we get a first and a second to begin?
I move that we talked about SPLOST.
We're going to
priority
approve
funding assignment.
First and second to approve the SPLOST priority?
I'm not good.
Well, I've got some questions, so I would hate to move to approve something.
That's correct.
But I'm going to open it up for discussion the second we get started.
That comes after the.
When I was opening it for discussion, you guys didn't want me to do it twice, so now I'm doing one opening.
You're correct.
Well, I'll move.
Yeah, but
For the sake of opening the discussion,
yeah, it's the same as accepting.
It doesn't mean I'm going to vote for this.
I got you.
Say
Okay,
second,
Curtis.
fun.
Can you walk us through?
We're waiting to hear the motion. It was a long motion.
Okay, based on what we presented to the board in the budget workshop, and based on the comments we received back from the board, we adjusted the priorities. So the board has the option of changing these priorities and then voting today. So the way the board report was written is that an alternative, as the board sees, is wanted to shift some of these around and then vote as amended, you're able to do that. But on your screen, if you look at page 61, I don't know, can you actually scroll down to 61? Right there. This is the most recent version we have. The board can decide to change it again or leave it and vote. It's totally up to you.
I believe this was based on the input that you got from board members after the last.
Correct.
It was basically moving the ITS, right? Did anything else really change?
Well,
I don't
some of
have
the county
original
stuff was
one.
moved down because if the county goes county-wide, the millage increase reflects the operating and capital costs to do that. So that it wasn't necessarily needs to be on the first priority. The ITS system moving up, pulling pots of money from vehicle replacement to get the ITS system done in the future years meant we should put the vehicle replacement higher up for those future years. The electric infrastructure, which is number 7, we just heard from Georgia Power. That initial cost is going to be covered in our grants that we have as far as the CERTA, the low note from the federal, and the SPLOST. So we're okay on that, but in the future you can see we're going to need to upgrade, as Terry pointed out, in about year 3, 4 more buses. So that's kind of how we, the method behind the madness as far as reprioritizing based on board feedback.
Okay, I guess my couple of sort of clarifications and question. The thing that we had said was so important, and at first it looked like it had been moved down, but the county-wide vehicle expansion, that's something we may need quickly, but it looks like that's addressed. I mean, it may not be all the way up on the priority list, but it's the top of the first year priority list, so that makes it the #1 spending priority.
The earliest spending priority, if we go countywide. But
Or SPLOST 7, but we still have projects and funding through SPLOST 6.
Right.
But this wouldn't be, these countywide vehicles wouldn't be in SPLOST 6, wouldn't be coming out of SPLOST 6.
They would basically, we would have to upfront it with some kind of funding plan. And if there was capital money available, I'd rather do that than use operating or reserve.
Really my question. When I first looked at this, I thought it had gotten pushed down because we had said it was going to be #1, but it is the first spending based on the way the years are spread out here. My concern, and I'm open to be talked out of this, but I'm still concerned that number 9 and 10 become our second spending. That's $1.5 million, which is the whole ITS system. And it just seemed like to me the ITS system was a higher priority.
So the ITS is funded with current grants available and the SPLOST 6. This submission was done in November before the critical need for the AVL and the scheduling and operations arose. So we have funded the ITS with current grants, and we pushed the SPLOST need to fleet replacement because that's where we stole the current money from.
I'm not talking about fleet replacement. I'm talking about in the first year we're spending $1.5 million on facility improvements at ITC and Gwinnett.
So we have it
and
funded in that year.
I don't see that as a higher priority than the ITS system.
Right, but as she said, the ITS system is already going to be funded. We don't need SPLOST 7 to fund ITS. We already are able to pull pots of money to fund ITS on our current SPLOST.
Okay, but we've still got in the year 2 through 6, we've got ITS in here, so obviously we're not funding it completely.
That's for maintenance costs and expansion and upgrades and things like that. But the $3 million that used to be in there for ITS year 1, we're able to do that before that kicks in because we really can't wait for that. But we still have it as a higher priority as far as longevity of the system.
So to summarize for Bill then, the ITS is coming next year.
So this is not, the facility improvement is not pushing back spending on ITS.
No, the ITS is happening.
Then I'm good.
Yep.
Okay,
The
Jay?
ITS plan for implementation start is July of this year.
Well, and we should say thank you, Stephanie, for some of this.
I'm good, Bill. I'm good.
You good?
The MPO money.
Anybody else have any questions? As Curtis says, if we don't like this list, we can amend it and we can have a motion to vote in an amended list. This is taking what we question, I guess, and rearranging it.
Well, and satisfied my concern.
In a little history, internally staff has always made this submission, but I think the community at large has submitted
More than
large
available
SPLOST
funding,
requests.
so that's why we're
This
prioritizing.
is the first time we've ever been asked to prioritize and receive board input and approval on that priority. So it has to do more with the collective agency submissions that total more than what the SPLOST will be than our actual order of projects. But the county has asked us to prioritize and have our board weigh in on that, and that's what this action does.
And that reduction from 23 million to 20 million was because you
Right, and
had
if you
other
look,
money.
if you look at, say, let's say the county says no to 9 through 12, okay? See, all the ones that we talked about were most important still stay in there.
And the reduction had to do with the redundancy between the timing. In November, we had not replaced the ITS, the fleet money, with the ITS. Internally, we moved that up to priority 0, where this is concerned. we took some fleet replacement money to fund the ITS so we could go ahead and release the RFP and get moving on that. So the 6 and 1 in each of the year 2 and 5 replaces that stolen money.
That we're taking from
and it
the
took the
pods.
$3 million out of year 1 for the ITS. It
Typically,
lowered-
vehicle replacement is something that is going to be an easy sell.
Okay, Jay.
So prior to the 750,000, over $1.75 million, have we had any facility improvements done prior to 20?
Yes.
Have we ever requested for it?
Yes.
And what amounts have we requested for it in this
I don't know
last
the
March?
exact amounts, but in SPLOST 6, of course, the buildings were finished and we had yearly amounts for capital improvements and capital maintenance of both facilities.
And what were those yearly amounts?
I don't know, I can look it up for you. I'm remembering a couple $100,000 per location in SPLOST 6.
So we're saying 400,000 is suffice per year to cover both facilities?
Correct.
And the 200 is not the county ask. The 200 is the capital project cost.
Okay.
The county ask is only the local match piece of that.
Right.
So
Which
this
is
total amount of capital projects, which is 55 million, the county local match over 6 years is only 20 million. We're getting federal grants that cover the rest of that cost.
But I'm specifically looking at facility improvement project.
So the facility improvement project, 200,000. 40 of it would be a SPLOST ask, with the remaining coming from an FTA capital grant.
Okay. So
The
what
top
is,
part of it is total cost.
So what is the request from the county?
Down at the
40.
bottom in section C, that middle line, SPLOST,
Uh-huh. But
totals
what-
it by year.
But I'm looking at specifically facility improvement projects, the two.
Okay, so year 1, the 750 each location is the money we need to provide for proper training and travel on paratransit, which would involve a space flip. We've been talking about it internally, so we're trying to plan for that
So
project.
the amount that of
It's
750
20% of the
20%
$1,500,000.
of the-
300 would be
Correct.
SPLOST in year 1. Then for each $200,000 bucket, the SPLOST would be 40,000.
Okay.
So the county SPLOST on both together would be 300 year 1, 80 in every year after that. And it would only materialize as we move through the approval processes to implement these capital projects.
And you're
This is
assuming-
not a one-time approval of this plan.
Understood. You're assuming there'd be no matching money for the countywide vehicles?
Right, we added that at the county
Full cost.
manager and assistant manager's request. When we asked them how we were supposed to upfront this capital and operating cost, they said put it in SPLOST. So that's that $2 million.
Full $2 million comes out of SPLOST.
Yep.
Right.
So you'll see the match percentage total to SPLOST is a little heavier in year 1, and it's that $2 million countywide expansion ask.
And the other piece, and I'm gonna leave it alone, number 4, upgrade fare box and payment system. With that being stated, you got $3 million costs at year 2.
That's
Every
what we
year
were
is
doing.
250 after that, up to year 5.
Right.
Year 6.
So we would replace the system in year 2 at $3 million, and the 250 is capital maintenance and additions to the farebox system, such as upgrades and software in year 3 to 6.
So what happens to that funding if the Jared Walker study says that we need to go fare box free?
It's all pending the
Understood.
discussion about fare free. We wouldn't spend the $3 million, and the county would either allow us to revise it to another category, or we would give it back and they would reallocate their 20% of that $3 million to another agency. In the past, we have had approved projects, and we have been allowed to spend our 5 to 6 year allocation within those projects, depending on need and timing of implementation.
So my question is, if we're, and I'm guessing we're leaning toward fare box free. I'm not sure, but as a board, if we go with fare box free, then that money will be sitting in the pot, and then we would have to ask the county as far as.
It'd be about $800,000 over the 6 years. And historically, they have allowed us to repurpose that to another one of our approved projects. The alternative being that it would not be spent, and I know there's like greater collections than estimates. Sometimes there's projects that don't move forward, and there's a pot of unused floss for even 4, 5, and 6 right now. So if we did not use it and we did not move it to another project, we would of course allow the county to redistribute it to somebody who did need it.
And I mean, I'm just saying all this because it's so high up on the threshold for an item that we may not even be using.
Right.
And that's what I'm asking.
Right, I understand.
But if
I
we
understand.
do, it's very important.
I mean, I understand if we do,
Yeah.
we need it, we do. But
If
we
we're
don't,
not gonna go fare free, it's a critical need
I agree with
because
you.
of the age and functionality of our current fare collection system, yes, sir.
We'll know by year 2.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions before we, I think to be specific, Curtis, I'd like to have a motion to call a vote for this to approve your capital improvement project detail sheet for the county as shown.
Sure. So moved, what he said.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hands. All those opposed? Any abstainers? Motion carries. Next up, on-call marketing.
Okay, we request board approval of the award of the on-call contract for photography services, including design and printing of system maps, route schedules, and signage. The point system and everything is put into your packet on your computer. And so it looks like the award was recommended to Smart Apps.
Okay, so I'd like to open this for discussion and voting. Do we have a first and a second to open?
So moved.
First, second.
Questions for Curtis? Any questions on this action item?
Can you give me a defined, brief detail of what it's all about, Curtis? Without trying to strain my eyes, trying to read this thing?
So as we look to provide system maps and other types of similar design work, we don't have the capability to do it in-house. So we looked at 3 vendors who proposed to be an on-call. Again, so the only work would come to them if we needed it. And so each one was evaluated by independent committee, and it came to the proposal that Smart Maps would be the one. And so the biggest thing certainly is going to be the system map that we create.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, hearing no further questions then, I'd like to call for a vote.
Hold for a question. I want to say this, and I don't want nobody thinking I'm being personal when I say this. I don't think we utilize all our resources in that department, and I think we do need to give a better explanation of what goes on in that department. I do think that we see a lot of people in the department, but what they actually do from day-to-day operations, I really don't know, and really would like a better synopsis of what goes on. So I will be either abstaining or voting against this right here. That's all
Okay,
I'm saying.
all in favor? Raise your hands. All opposed? There are no abstainers, so motion carries. That's the end of our action items, so then we move into the executive report.
Chairman Howard, may I be excused? I got a funeral too.
Absolutely.
Thank you, bro.
Bye, Jim.
Thank you.
So the executive director report is in your board packets. I do want to highlight the fact that the moving target, I want to point out, is HB 511. As many of you are aware, that has a single county sales tax in there. But it also has a lot of number of other things that recommendations on how to restructure transportation in Georgia in general to help assist with rural transportation. That bill is supposed to be voted on by the end of the day today in the Senate committee. And if it passes, it's going to go to the Senate floor probably as early as Friday. But what we're concerned with is that that bill might be stripped away to get it out of committee. But from what I'm told, the sales tax piece is not on the table, the chopping block. It's basically is pulling the fact that the bill pulls the responsibility and the funding away from GDOT to manage the rural transportation and regional commissions is really what's the problem. So that might be stripped out, and they may retool that to look differently, but we will see. But as soon as if it comes out of committee, which means then it would go to the floor. If it comes out of committee, I'll let the board know. I'll send an email out tonight.
Rules now.
It's yes, it's going to, so we're thinking it's going to be a substitute bill. It's going to look a little different to get out of committee. And that's not going to be till the end of the day today. But then if it goes to the floor, we think the earliest it'll be voted on by the body is going to be Friday at the earliest. But as you know, we're running out of days with the session. So Tuesday's the last day of the session, so.
Of course.
Yeah, 11th hour stuff. Always true.
I have one question on KPI. The on-time performance at 53%, I'm assuming that that's a reflection of the
That's
new
the
way we're
APC,
measuring,
correct.
the more accurate way
Yes.
we're measuring.
Yes, sir. That's the APC version.
Ouch.
Well, it's interesting. I saw a.
Maybe you should have kept lying to it.
I saw a statistic. I don't remember. It was either Memphis Transit or Charlotte, but it said on their website it had the KPIs dashboard listed, and their goal for on-time performance, their goal was 65%.
So's ours now.
At
Yeah,
this,
we'll
at
change
this
it.
time, yes. Hopefully the redesign will fix that.
If there's no other questions for Curtis in the executive report, let's move on to the updates.
All right. So the service delivery update is in your packet. Mike, did you want to highlight anything?
Just wanted to highlight the fact that our customer complaints for both fixed and para were down in February. Ridership on the ferry was down a little bit because there were less special events at the Civic Center and Convention Center. And lastly, our accidents continue to trend positively down. I'll answer any questions you have at this time.
I don't know if this is part of your report or not. The fare pass sales, is that you or is that later?
Oh, that's the pier. Go up a little bit.
The fare pass, well, it's a good thing.
We have the year-over-year for you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you getting that included. Thank you for that, and it's a beautiful number. Do you have any, can you speculate why we're seeing such a nice increase in sales, in pass sales? You know, we had a 412% increase from February last year.
Damn. Can I see it?
The daily passes.
You're right. Down a little bit.
Down.
Somewhere here. A little more.
Keep going.
It's page 77.
Right there. Right there.
That's page 6.
So, well, look at the top. But yeah, I mean, all of these are nice, healthy increases over last year. Is that something we can? Is that a fluke, or is that something that's going to continue? Are we doing something to make that happen, or did we just get lucky, or does nobody know the answer to all of these existential questions?
Well, this is obviously captured in a vacuum. We don't have the comparison for the rest of which we can certainly draw upon. So we can build that up so we can see if it is.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked for these comparisons.
Right. So yeah, that is a great number, especially as we try to move away from cash. And then as soon as we can get something within our website where you can purchase fares to the website, that would probably even be better. But in order to truly know if it's a trend, is to show a longer.
But and there's no, we can't point to anything we've done in particular, or
No.
can we?
Not at this time.
We're planning to do a push, encouraging more of our customers to use the passes versus, cash. So,
Yeah.
we are planning to get some interior cards and some other information out to the ridership aides to try to push them toward using more fares. But since, thanks to your request, this is the, first time that we can kind of look at this comparison.
Right. So when we have more time, we're going to extrapolate that out to more data, so it may not be as tipsy.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Mike, I've got one question for you.
Yes.
We're on the continuing Paris transit saga with Dr. Williams. Have you heard back from her on this log that she apparently keeps?
I have not. reached out a couple times since our last board meeting.
I believe the
yesterday.
commissioners were going to reach out to her after the board meeting.
Yes.
But we still today
I
have
have
not
not
received anything.
Okay.
I don't have the chart in front of me, but in terms of the paratransit, and I know I sound like a broken record, but we're still seeing a decrease in paratransit riders and a substantial increase in the non-paratransit rider, the companions and the aides. We still don't have a good reason.
It really doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. They do pay a fare as well, the companions, so.
It seems like at some point, even if they're paying a fare, at some point it's got to create a complication in paratransit service. Maybe not.
Not at this time. But you're right, down the road it could.
But it just, if anything, I mean, aside from whether it creates a problem or not, it's just a strange thing.
It is.
We keep seeing those kinds of
It
increases.
would be a while before it became a capacity issue. So I don't think that's a.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious about why we would keep seeing those increases when we've actually had a reduction in the paratransit ride.
Yeah, actually the other day, Dr. Helen, you were mentioning to me about how it's a lot of the statistics around paratransit, there's no rhyme or reason.
None at all. And I think it, now that we have the capacity on the bus, as opposed to a single option van or taxi.
Right.
The husband's gonna go, the housekeeper's gonna go, whoever's, and it might get them out of the store faster, so it might help in the long run somewhere.
Even
it's
so,
like the Wednesday service. Why is it all kooky? No one knows. It's a mystery.
Well, and I can see if you've got the capacity, somebody that's a paratransit customer that's going, somebody tagging along with them, but we're actually seeing a decline in the paratransit customer number with a huge increase in the others. That's the part that just confuses me.
It should level out at some point.
So that's a problem.
Okay, then let's, Clinton, here you go. We're going to move into system development.
Hey, Patricia?
I just have one announcement for the group. As Grant mentioned, we'll be kicking off Phase 2 the week of April 8th, and our consultants will be in town that week. Michelle also made the offer to meet one-on-one with board members to discuss, Phase 2 concepts versus coverage. So if you're interested in us scheduling a one-on-one meeting with Michelle and you all and yourself, if you could coordinate through Beverly, let her know of your interest, and we'll be kind of fleshing out her schedule for that week. She's going to do the stakeholders committee meeting, remember,
right.
The VIC public meeting, city council.
So the workshop, if you coordinated that with Brett?
Yes. Grant's on top of it. So I just wanted to throw that out, that we'll be sending you a reminder email, working with Beverly on that. And if you just let us know your interest, we'll be happy to coordinate that for you. And I guess to do with your question about marketing, we are working on a number of initiatives for Phase 2. One of those plans is to have a display here at ITC. We're trying to figure out how we can have a really nice display as you enter the building, and how we can entice customers from the platform to come over and take the survey and look at the maps. And so we're working on that. Another win for us is our consultants have reached out to the libraries, and we've gotten permission to have displays in the libraries in the area. So we're going to do that as well. And we'll also be doing a number of community meetings during the month of April to share information about Phase 2. One of those dates is, of course, will be at Earth Day. Have a nice display set up. And we're looking at geographical areas of the community, trying to make sure that we spread ourselves around.
If you can, maybe try to do some of those setups in the community centers, especially the higher population community centers like WW Law or Modes Jackson.
Mm-hmm. Our staff suggested some of those, so thank you. But any other suggestions that you have for, please send them our way.
The one-on-one meetings with Michelle would be really cool. I just think that's an incredibly valuable piece of time, and I would say probably it may be a good idea for us to consider who would you bring along to have a conversation with Michelle about. I've got a couple individuals in mind that I think are change agents or amplifiers in town, that I would absolutely encourage, just two, and probably just one, to have lunch with Michelle and just like talk about transit. And I think that will really ignite an interest for that person that we bring along. So if we do that, I would encourage maybe not just us as board members, but also bring along a good friend.
It's an interesting idea. If Michelle's willing to do that, if a meeting with a board member could include a plus one.
Okay.
Mhm. And
We'll
I
run
think-
that by her. She's also planning to have, we talked about having talking points for you all
Yeah.
that will be helpful, so that when you're going to various meetings out into the community, all of us are basically, using the same key points.
That's what I go back to, like with Grant, what you were talking about, is I want to be able to say, with this one we'll be giving, better rides to 30,000 people, and with this one we'll be giving better rides to 20,000 people, blah, blah, blah. So that's important.
I'm actually having a town hall meeting next week too, if you guys wanted to take a couple of minutes and just speak.
Okay.
And then,
What's the date on that?
Let me get with you afterwards.
Okay.
Does anybody know Brittany Curry? She goes by the name Inky Brittany. Have you seen her work?
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys do. So Brittany, maybe I've brought this up, but Brittany does graphic facilitation, where she has a large piece of paper and she listens and she writes and draws in a very beautiful, very accessible way, kind of what the conversation is about. And I'd love to get you hooked up with Brittany, because I think her services would be very valuable for the April 8th or the April 11th meeting, available for us. And what the product that she delivers is a large graphic that you can use and point out sort of the more, the less quantifiable aspects of the conversations that we're having. The ones about care, the ones about people, and the ones about values. And I think she captures these really well. And does and it's an amazing product that she develops that I think would be helpful as we shop this around.
Can you send out
Yeah, I will.
one that we can look at?
And I mean, she does a really incredible job on a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, the Curtis, I think we moved to finance.
All right, Terry, you have anything you want to point out?
So, results for the first 8 months of our fiscal year are in the package. We're holding firm, better than budget overall, both month to date and year to date. For the update, we did add a chart that gives you the status of all RFP release approvals for 2018, and we'll move that forward month over month as we move through the processes. We have to take any questions.
We're projecting pretty well right now.
Yeah, you can see it's the 2 months worth of activity lowered it from that 1.3 projection with the first 6. What's driving that is the hiring for the vacancies over January and February, and a spike in materials and supplies due to building up the inventory for the buses. So instead of the 1.3 where we're looking at through December, it's down to right at 900. So, but it's still holding better than budget.
And do we all notice that we now have interest income?
Yes.
What?
We have interest income.
It's very exciting.
So we're just passively making cash out of thin air. I love that.
I love what it represents, that we're not
We
2 or
have
3
cash.
months behind in our operating cost and can cover our monthly expenses without strain.
And we don't have to pay penalties on those late bills.
Very cool.
It's all good stuff.
Okay, with no other questions for Terry, I would move that we adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll drop the cars and then we'll
Still scrolling.